Clearly, if Twitter is doing one team's bidding before an election, shutting down dissenting voices on a pivotal election, that is the very definition of election interference. Frankly, Twitter was acting like an arm of the Democratic National Committee. It was absurd.
Well, it's a big claim, isn't it? Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk, believes that the company interfered in the last presidential election in order to help the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden, beat the Republican incumbent, Donald Trump. And over the past couple of weeks, he's been releasing internal Twitter documents to prove his point. The so-called Twitter files reveal how the company suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story just 3 weeks before the election. And they confirm that Twitter has been shadow banning conservatives for years, a complaint that was once written off as a conspiracy theory. Now, while some claim that Twitter cost Trump the election, others say the whole story is a big nothing burger. So which is it?
You simply cannot ignore Elon Musk.
Elon Musk is eliminating the platform's Trust and Safety Council.
Elon Musk has been busy releasing more Twitter files,
highlighting documents on Twitter's censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Now that Elon Musk owns Twitter, he's in a position to, in his words, set the bird free and reveal what he'd regard as the company's darkest secrets. To that end, he's handed over thousands of Twitter documents, including internal emails, screenshots, and chat logs, to two independent journalists, Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss, and to the author Michael Schellenberger. The whole project has been marketed and promoted by Musk as the Twitter Files.
The idea here is simply to come clean on everything that has happened in the past in order to have build public trust for the future.
So far, there have been 5 big releases, all relating to Twitter and its impact on American politics. The first was all about how Twitter handled the Hunter Biden laptop story. Then came revelations about Twitter's blacklists or shadow banning. A third installment detailed how Twitter censored Donald Trump. Part 4 covered how Twitter employees reacted to the riots at the US Capitol. Part 5 delved further into Trump's ban. Of these, the Biden laptop story is arguably the most interesting. With just 3 weeks to go until Election Day in 2020, rumors swirled that Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was about to be the subject of a big exposé. And on the 14th of October, the New York Post duly delivered. The headline read, "Biden's secret emails." The paper went on to accuse Hunter of leveraging his family connections for his own benefit, and it revealed details about his very personal life and drug problems. The Post reported it had got its information from a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop hard drive given to them by the Trump campaign. The story was dynamite, but Twitter blocked its users from sharing the article. The question is, why? The Twitter files confirm that the company's leadership did debate suppressing the story first. Some, including one of Twitter's top lawyers, James Baker, argued it should be suppressed as it might have relied on hacked material. Others argued there was no evidence of a hack. Baker and others got their way, and the story was suppressed. The Twitter files suggest that the former CEO, Jack Dorsey, was unaware of the move and acknowledges it was wrong to suppress the Biden laptop story, given that it was not the result of hacked material.
Yeah, we made a total mistake with New York Post. We corrected that within 24 hours. It was not to do with the content, it was to do with a hacked materials policy. We had an incorrect interpretation. We don't write policy according to any particular political leaning.
Dorsey's replacement, Elon Musk, is not buying it.
You are basically exposing collusion between a political party and in one file that was released, it was even called the Biden team contacting Twitter. I mean, that is election interference, isn't it?
Yeah, clearly, if Twitter is doing one team's bidding before an election, shutting down dissenting voices on a pivotal election, that is the very definition of election interference. I mean, what the hell else would you? Of course, it's like, yes, frankly, Twitter was acting like an arm of the Democratic National Committee. It was absurd.
Well, joining me now to discuss the Twitter files are Matt Binder, a technology reporter who writes for Mashable, and the former FBI agent Frank Worrell, with over 20 years plus experience at that agency. So welcome to both of you. Matt Binder, I'd like to start with you. From Elon Musk's perspective, he is doing a very noble thing here. He is bringing in two independent journalists and allowing them to look at what's going on behind the scenes at Twitter as much as they want, and then exposing everything that went wrong before he took over so that the platform can then become maximally trusted going forward. What's wrong with that?
Sure, there's nothing wrong with that, in the way that, you have described it and others have described it. The facts are, though, that how this information has been released, and then also the narrative being spun by Elon Musk's two handpicked journalists, and there are additional journalists that Elon Musk is adding to. So far, though, they haven't been telling a story that even bears the documentation to prove such a thing. Like, for example, Matt Taibbi in his original Twitter Files report said that he has, documentation proof that Twitter had a Democratic-leaning, a liberal-leaning bias, and you would assume that documentation would be some internal Twitter documents, conversation, something that shows that we didn't already know. But instead, his proof was just public information that anyone has been able to access for many, many years. That just shows that, okay, more Twitter employees donate to Democratic campaigns and organizations than they do to Republican campaigns or organizations. That's not exactly a smoking gun, or that really doesn't tell us very much. So yeah, I think the idea of transparency is great. I just don't think we are quite seeing that yet.
Matt, can we go back to your initial objection, which is that he's chosen two journalists, handpicked, as you put it. What's wrong with that? Matt Taibbi, I think he's pretty well known from Substack, and then you've got Barry Weiss, who was a New York Times reporter. Are you saying there's something wrong with them?
Well, yeah, I think that both of them have shown over the years that they've, they're a bit, have right-leaning values. Matt Taibbi, I know pretty well. I've been in the same room with him, on the same shows as him. He has certainly drifted rightward over the years. And Barry Weiss, frankly, he's never really been a journalist. She was a New York Times reporter who left and has shown bias against what she would call like woke college liberals, and she's shown bias against the Palestinian people over the years. I mean, again, everyone has biases, and this is fine, but Elon Musk picked these two people because they are fine with stringing along the narrative that they've pushed forward so far. If he wanted more transparency, he would release these documents to a very wide swath of journalists who could then pour over them, and then
he did say on December the 3rd that he was planning to release everything, out in the open for everyone to have a look at. But initially, he wanted to funnel it and to shape it through these two journalists.
Sure. That's we have to wait and see if he actually does that. One problem with that, for example, is in Matt Taibbi's original Twitter Files, he explains that there were requests for content to be taken down from both the Trump White House and the Biden campaign in October 2020. Yet then he proceeds to go through tweet after tweet detailing the Biden campaign's requests for takedown, but he never ever gets into the Trump White House requests. I mean, personally, I'm very interested in seeing what those Trump White House requests are. After that release, Elon Musk was talking about First Amendment violations. Well, the Biden campaign is not the government, so they can't carry out First Amendment violations, but the Trump White House very well could. They are the administration in power. We don't know, because Frank, Matt Taibbi did not go into detail on that.
I get the feeling Frank wants to come in on a number of the points you've raised. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, Matt Taibbi and the other journalists on the right, they believe that they're very liberal journalists, not exactly Wall Street Journal and conservative magazines, but be careful what you wish for as to what's going to come out. When you say the Trump White House, I guess that would include Tony Fauci and the FBI director and the CIA or the DOJ, and I'm all for seeing that. I think on the right, they're highly anticipating the release of that information.
Why don't we take a look at the Twitter files one by one? So far, 5 sort of releases, if you like. Matt, if we look at the Hunter Biden story, what did we learn from Matt Taibbi on the Hunter Biden laptop story that we didn't know already?
Sure. What we found out in that first Twitter files release is that the Biden campaign in October 2020, this is before the election, requested that a number of links be removed from Twitter for breaking Twitter's policies. A number of tweets, I should say. They provided the links to those tweets. And Matt Taibbi presented those links and those Biden campaign requests and the Twitter internal discussion around it, which is fine. That's absolutely great. That to be transparent, we should see that sort of information if that's what they'd like to do. But he didn't look into what those links are. Now, of course, those tweets are. Now, of course, those tweets were taken down from Twitter, but they were very easily accessible via the Internet Archive. And so one of the first things I and many other journalists did when we saw that document that showed those links is that we checked those links on the Internet Archive, and we found those tweets. And what they amounted to were, nude photos of Hunter Biden. That breaks Twitter policy. That's not exactly relevant to any sort of political discussion. And Twitter agreed that broke their policy, so they took it down. We didn't see any information regarding the Biden campaign requesting anything else being taken down. Does it exist? Maybe. We haven't seen it yet, though. He also detailed the New York Post link being blocked from Twitter that talked about the Hunter Biden laptop story in October 2020. That was absolutely wrong for Twitter to take that link, to block that link on their platform. I thought it was a very bad move. Obviously, they're allowed to do that. It's their platform. But I thought that was ridiculous for them to do, and many other journalists did as well.
The pretext there, Matt, was that it broke their policy about sharing stories that sourced their material from hacked material.
Right.
Now, why would they come to that conclusion erroneously just before the election? Seems a bit suspicious.
Right. Well, I mean, according to the documents dropped by Matt Taibbi from the Elon Musk's Twitter files, there was internal discussion at Twitter. There was pretty heavy debate between the employees there who had to make these decisions. Some of them thought it was ridiculous that they took down the link right away and were fighting to get it reactivated. Others wanted to be careful. We saw a message from one of their deputy general counsel who was saying, we just don't know what this is yet.
Right.
Yes. We just don't know what this is yet. We need to be careful. He didn't rule out either scenario. And then what we found out, we knew this too in October 2020 because it happened in real time. A few hours after they initially blocked the link, they reversed course. They said it was the wrong move for them to do. They let people post the New York Post link again. And then in the following days, they came out with very long explanations of how this happened. And they changed their policy over
You don't think it was politically, Matt, you don't think it was politically motivated?
I think it was politically motivated in the sense that they wanted to be extra careful and didn't want blowback from any political party. I think they would have probably done the same if there was some sort of, big, questionable release from either side, to be honest. I think they just don't they just want to avoid any controversy. That's pretty much it.
Look, Frank, I think this is where you come in. Frankly, Twitter, the leadership, put forward as its reason for blocking the New York Post story the previous conversations that they'd had, many conversations that they'd had with US intelligence agencies and, for example, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They had apparently been put on warning that some hack and release operation against Joe Biden was coming. What do you make of that as a defense?
The FBI has always maintained liaisons with all types of companies, institutions. On this one, however, the FBI already had in their custody the laptop information. It was more than It's very, in fact, it's very unusual for the FBI, if there's an ongoing investigation, to reach out for anyone. You would generally have no comment at all. To go out and proactively try and cast shadows on what is out in the public domain, one way or the other, is highly unusual. Highly unusual. It's never done. You have to remember that not only was this in the middle of a presidential campaign, it was actually in the middle of the primaries where the Democrats were selecting their own candidate. So they already had this out there. And to go and comment one way or the other is unusual. You keep a distance from that. It's one thing for the Biden campaign to go to Twitter, go to Facebook, and ask that they don't present something. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with Twitter or Facebook reacting positively to that request. It is beyond the pale for a government agency to go and try and halt public access to public information.
Matt Binder, I think one of the key things, the key points that Frank Worrell raises here is that the FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop from December 2019. So by the time the New York Post story came out, they knew that it wasn't as a result or originating from a Russian misinformation campaign. It wasn't as the result of a hack. Therefore, why the warnings to Twitter and others that such a hack would be, and misinformation campaign, would be emanating from state actors alluding to Russia, presumably?
Oh, that I can't answer in terms of the FBI side of things. All we've seen via the Twitter files so far is Twitter had this long-standing policy against hacked materials, and for one reason or another, maybe based on what they had heard from the U.S. government, that this was possibly obtained via a hack. I mean, for me, the hacked materials policy was outright wrong to begin with. It doesn't really matter to me that they were told it was hacked material or not. We have received important information for the general public via hacked materials throughout American history. It's one thing to say, okay, we don't want the actual raw documents posted on our platform, but for them to block careful, ethical reporting on those documents from news outlets is to me was just ridiculous to begin with. So this is even a moot discussion in terms of that. I mean, they should definitely not have they definitely should not have blocked any sort of link to any story. I mean, again, Twitter is in their right to do so. This is their platform. This is free. This is the free speech for them. They're allowed to say we don't want this on our platform. Myself, as a journalist and a user of Twitter, I thought it was the wrong move for them to block a link to a news article covering any sort of document.
Okay, let's move on to the next aspect of the Twitter files and shadow banning. Matt, the assertion here is that this thing that's been called a conspiracy theory for many, many years has been confirmed by the Twitter files. Just explain to our viewers what shadow banning is and whether or not you agree that Twitter has been engaging in that, particularly against conservative users.
Sure. So there are multiple definitions of shadow banning, and that's why the problem has arose about some Twitter saying they don't shadow ban and conservatives saying they do shadow ban. So basically, the dictionary definition of shadow banning is when a platform basically blocks access to someone's content without the user posting that content knowing. Now, according to Twitter, they didn't shadow ban it. And based on that definition, they didn't. If you followed any user on Twitter, you would be able to see their content. if you didn't follow them and you came across their tweet because maybe someone you did follow retweeted their tweet into your feed, you would see it. This content was accessible. That goes for every user on the platform, conservative or otherwise. Now, what they did do that we've known for a couple of years now is that if certain users had tweets that were, say, inflammatory or just was at the line of outright breaking policy that would get them suspended, but they didn't cross that line to get suspended, they would basically put labels on these tweets, in their internal system that would remove this user's content from, it'd filter their content in certain avenues. For example, there was like a trends blacklist label that would basically stop a user's tweets from showing up on the Twitter trends list. There was like a block of a user showing up in the Twitter search if you want to like look for that specific user's account. So there were certainly filters that would take out users from certain features on Twitter, but in terms of outright blocking a user from being able to be found, that wasn't the case.
So in terms of de-amplification, then, we've seen from the Twitter files that they tend to be applied to conservatives, the libs of TikTok, Charlie Kirk, and so on. Why do you think it's biased in that way?
Sure. Now, we don't know exactly who else they blocked because, again, the way these Twitter file documents are being released, they're handpicking what to show. So if we've just seen who they've chosen to show us, which does show conservative activists, no doubt. But again, who knows? That we haven't seen the raw documentation, hasn't been released yet. If Elon Musk does release it like he said he would.
Frank, your comments on shadow banning?
Well, it's all of what he said and more. It is this term disinformation that that clearly comes from not only a left perspective, but an establishment perspective, where if you had dissenting voices having to do with COVID or COVID treatment, some of those highly educated, highly respected physicians were blocked, such as Dr. Robert Malone from Twitter. A complete ban on his voice. To say that, well, you could go somewhere else. Yes, you could go somewhere else. But a lot of this really transcended both the Trump administration and the Obama administration, where somebody will take a position. It's disinformation. That's what debate and discussion's all about. It's contrary views. It's an open, should be an open, free exchange of thoughts and ideas. There is no one right person out there, nor a group that's all embedded within Twitter that can really judge what disinformation is.
Look, we're coming towards the end of the program. Let's look at what Elon Musk is doing and if he's moving the platform in the right direction. So, for example, Matt, he's saying that he wants to make the software allow each Twitter user, to be aware of whether or not they're being shadow banned or limited in some way. Do you think that's a good idea?
Oh yeah, if he does that would be a great thing. I think these platforms should be able to have whatever policies they want, obviously, as private organizations, private companies. That is their right. But at the same time, they should be very transparent with their users, so their users know what it is that they, what sort of filtering has been put on their account, so they could even know what they did. That a lot of times these platforms, not just Twitter, will maybe remove a video on YouTube or suspend you on Facebook, and just give you a vague ruling of, you broke this policy, but without saying what piece of content broke that policy or what about that content broke the policy. These platforms should be as transparent as possible to those users. That I would absolutely welcome if he actually rolls that out.
Frank, just a final answer from you. What would you like to see from Elon Musk in handling and changing this very, very important platform?
I think this is an excellent thing. Shedding light, having a true open look at what transpired in the past, especially as it relates to government agencies, not only the FBI or the security agencies, even the FDA and the medical departments within the government, putting their thumb on the scale of not justice but information is I think it is tremendous. It will keep that from happening again. Now think of it: if this was the '60s and the FBI was approaching a company like Twitter, it would be a very intimidating act. So the fact that it happened just in the last years doesn't make it any better.
Frank Worrell,
It's
thank you so much.
Yes.
I have to cut you short a little bit, I'm afraid. And Matt Binder, thank you also for your contributions to the Nexus. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Until next week then, goodbye.